Hello, and glad you can join us. Here's what's happening. The art of the deal, signs of progress in trade talks.
An increasing pace to try and address an agreement, at least one in principle.
Breaking down what we know about the breakthrough with the U.S. All right, unease, arrest,
it is a drastic and
dissent.
chaotic escalation and completely unnecessary.
Once again, unease and unrest and dissent in Los Angeles. Plus, memories of the man behind the sound of a California summer.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
All right, let's get to that confirmation of progress in talks between Canada and the U.S. on a crucial economic and security deal. The two sides going back and forth over the past few weeks. Donald Trump launched a trade war in February, most recently targeting steel and aluminum with 50% tariffs. CTV's chief political correspondent Vassy Kapelos has been working her sources, working the phones, and Vassy, the two sides are talking. There is indeed a framework. So can we look at this as being potentially positive?
Yeah, I think, Sandy, the key word there is potentially. A lot still remains to be determined, but certainly there is progress in contrast to where things were even a few months ago. You mentioned those intensifying discussions, and certainly we've even heard the Prime Minister publicly refer to them. But I can tell you, they have been going on very frequently. In fact, Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who oversees the file, who oversees this potential agreement on behalf of the federal government, has been in Washington on extended trips over the past 4 weeks, at sometimes for 3 or 4 days. So lots of conversations going on there. The Prime Minister, we know, has spoken to President Trump as well. So the possibility exists. I will say the big irritant remains for Canada, the removal of tariffs. We might not get all tariffs removed, but in particular steel and aluminum are a sticking point. So far from over, but progress to be certain.
Okay, and no assurances. I mean, yes, progress, but no assurances it's going to happen because ultimately Donald Trump has to sign off, and he's dealing with a lot these days, right?
Yeah, very much so. I will say a week ago, I was getting told by people in the government who are working on this file, 24 to 72 hours, we might have an announcement. This week, they are much more cautious about that possibility, and it's because of, in the best of times, Donald Trump is very mercurial, right? In times like this, when he's at odds with Elon Musk, when he is, involved very deeply in what's going on in Los Angeles, it's even more mercurial. Things are more temperamental, and so there's so many words of caution being issued in my direction that this all hinges on what Trump ultimately decides to do, and there is no way of predicting that or a certain timeline at this point.
Okay, Vassy, thanks so much. Now, as for negotiations with China, Donald Trump says the deal is done. That deal is done, and that the two countries have agreed on a framework for a trade truce. It's a move that will see the U.S. get access to China's rare earth minerals.
Separately of this deal, and when it comes to this deal, we're going back to the terms that were agreed upon in Geneva for the release of some of those critical minerals and the magnets from China to the United States.
The agreement allows the U.S. to charge a 55% tariff on Chinese goods, while China would charge a 10% tariff on U.S. imports. Very little movement on the markets as analysts wait for more details. And as we mentioned with Vassy, Donald Trump is also focused on those arrests and the riots taking place in Los Angeles. And there have been hundreds of arrests after days of ugly and disturbing confrontations. And now the protests, albeit calmer, are underway for a 6th day. But the unrest is spreading to other big American cities. And U.S. Marines are joining National Guard troops sent in by the American president in a test of power and political will. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon is on this story today. And Joy, where do things stand?
Hey, Sandy, look, it's pretty peaceful in L.A. right now, and it's important to note that these protests are happening in a very small part of downtown L.A. So traffic is moving, police going to work, going about their daily business. But there are legal fights ahead, especially after the president overstepped California's governor and city officials and sent in the U.S. military. Despite an overnight curfew in Los Angeles, police broke up crowds protesting the president's immigration raids, arresting hundreds of people last night. Some for vandalism. 24 businesses were looted overnight, but most were arrested for breaking the curfew.
The situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. But that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation. He chose more force. He chose theatrics over public safety.
In a primetime address, California's governor condemned the president for deploying a massive show of military force he objected to, calling it an abuse of power. 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines called up, now protecting ICE agents, providing security as the government steps up its immigration raids.
Well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers.
Anger erupting over the government's crackdown have fueled demonstrations in cities across America.
No Trump, no ICE, no fascist U.S.A.
The president, who relishes his law and order reputation, digging in on his controversial use of the military, threatening to do it to other cities if he has to.
This is the first, perhaps, of many, or perhaps, if we didn't attack this one very strongly, you'd have them all over the country.
And after protests erupted in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott said he's calling up the National Guard.
We're not scared to go further. We're not frightened to do something else if we need to.
Sandy, it is fast becoming a summer of unrest. Protests are planned for Saturday across America. At the same time, Donald Trump's military parade with tanks and Black Hawk helicopters will roll through Washington. Sandy?
Okay, Joy, thank you so much. Now, the music of the Beach Boys symbolized the spirit and fantasy of California back in the 1960s, then a very different time and place. There were songs like California Girls, Surfin, U.S.A, and Good Vibrations. Many of those hits written and arranged by Brian Wilson, who we learned today has died. CTV's Andrew Johnson on the creative force behind one of the most popular American rock groups ever.
Here are the Beach Boys.
Their Southern California sound defined a generation.
Round, round, get around.
The man behind it, Brian Wilson. He co-founded the group in the early 1960s with his brothers, their cousin, and a friend. Wilson, the leader and songwriter, has been described as a visionary, a musical genius, serving up unforgettable harmonies and arrangements that peaked on the legendary album Pet Sounds. But Wilson also struggled. For decades, he dealt with mental illness and drug abuse, spending much of the 1970s a recluse.
I was confined to my bedroom. I was able to get a hold of all these drugs, and they messed me up. They messed my mind up.
A period also chronicled in a famous tribute from the Bare Naked Ladies.
Lying in bed, just like Brian Wilson did.
In later years, Wilson released a number of solo albums and reunited with the Beach Boys for a successful 50th anniversary tour. In 2024, it was revealed he was diagnosed with dementia. Today, his family posted this picture of Brian Wilson announcing his death, saying they are heartbroken and at a loss for words.
God only knows what I'd be without you.
Brian Wilson was 82. Andrew Johnson, CTV News.
As we turn our attention to the wildfires, a raging wildfire north of Vancouver has led to a local state of emergency, and it is growing rapidly in size.
Never ever seen anything like this before, especially how close it was, to us, right here.
Approximately 200 homes in the community of Squamish are under evacuation alert. Flames are burning on a steep terrain along the Sea to Sky Highway. The BC Wildfire Service says cooler temperatures in the forecast would help the efforts. Environment Canada has issued additional smoke warnings for Squamish, Vancouver Island, and northern BC, where crews are battling massive fires. Now, across Canada, there are 225 active wildfires with more than 100 out of control. Rain over Saskatchewan has helped in the battle against those destructive wildfires, with some folks close to going home. But today the Premier was in the hot seat addressing criticism that the province simply isn't doing enough. CTV's Alison Bamford in Saskatoon now on what was said and where things go from here. Alison,
Sandy, a scathing rebuke of the province's inability to provide basic needs like food and safe shelter to some evacuees has forced the Premier to acknowledge the shortfalls and act.
There are bottlenecks in the systems that we have to support those families and to support Saskatchewan evacuees. We've pushed ourselves and pushed the Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency and pushed the government of Saskatchewan and proper to address those concerns.
More staff have been added to the call line to ensure evacuees looking for support get a call back. New today, the province says it will be giving $500 additional to every northern evacuee dispersed through local governments. Just yesterday, Saskatchewan's ombudsman ordered an investigation into the province's response.
It's unprecedented for us not to have a more responsive response when we say we've got a problem and people need to be fed.
One woman we spoke to evacuated 2 weeks ago. She says she's still waiting for financial assistance from the Public Safety Agency.
With the last big evacuation of over 17,000 people, there had to have been issues and road bumps that policy should have been changed.
10 years ago, more than 17,000 people were evacuated from northern Saskatchewan. The Premier says there were capacity issues then, but most went to congregate evacuation shelters. This time around, many more are staying with family or in hotels and Airbnbs across the province, a factor that will be considered when the government reviews its policy in the future. Sandy?
All right, Allison, thank you. So we've got BC, the Prairie Provinces, Ontario, thousands displaced by wildfires. CTV's Alex Karpa shares the story of a Manitoba grandfather who can speak firsthand about the cost of the wildfires to his family. Alex.
Sandy, it was a journey Raymond Robinson never thought he'd ever have to go through. Not only did he have to evacuate himself from his community of Cross Lake in northern Manitoba, but he was responsible for getting his 19 grandchildren to safety. Raging wildfires in Cross Lake forced Robinson and his family to flee, and they didn't have much time. Robinson says he rented a van and drove all of his grandkids and family to the ferry terminal. There they were catching a ferry to Norway House, which was their only way out, but they had to wait over 8 hours due to the backlog of people escaping. Once they finally got to Norway House, they were able to fly to Winnipeg on a military Hercules plane. All in all, the journey of leaving Cross Lake and landing in Winnipeg took 2 days.
My heart, my mind was in great stress because of my grandchildren.
Robinson says he and his family registered with the Red Cross. They didn't have any food, water, or extra clothing, just the clothes on their backs and a few other items. After waiting around for several hours, they were able to find a hotel to stay at here in Winnipeg. Some of his grandkids went with their parents to Brandon, Manitoba, but the rest of the family, including 14 grandkids, are now packed into 4 rooms, which is very tight.
I don't even sleep here because there's no room.
Robinson and his family are just one example of the thousands of unplanned evacuation journeys. To date, over 21,000 people have registered with the Red Cross, taking shelter throughout Manitoba and in other provinces. Sandy?
Alex, thank you for this. Coming up, verdict in a retrial. A jury decides the fate again of a former film producer. The Crown has begun closing arguments in the trial of 5 former World Junior Hockey players. The men have all pleaded not guilty to allegations of sexual assault in a London hotel room in 2018. Earlier today, lawyers for the 5 made their closing submissions. CTV's Heather Wright is at the courthouse. And Heather, what did we hear today from both sides?
Sandy, defense lawyers have finished their final submissions, with the Crown now presenting her closing arguments here in London.
The judge has now heard from all 5 defense attorneys who separately outline why their respective clients should be acquitted. Today, Lisa Carnellos, Dylan Dubé's attorney, told the judge the Crown has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the events that took place in June 2018 amounted to sexual assault. It's an argument also made this morning by Cal Foot's lawyer. Foot is accused of doing the splits over the complainant's face while naked. Juliana Greenspan says her client did the splits over the complainant's torso and was fully clothed in shorts and a t-shirt and never touched her. This was in a playful manner. This was a playful trick, and EM was in on it, she said. Greenspan told the judge that EM never told police in her first interview that the man who did the splits didn't have pants on. During her testimony, EM said she clearly remembered him not having pants on and that it wouldn't have been shocking to her otherwise. Greenspan argues this discrepancy calls into question EM's credibility. The complainant has changed her evidence in a material way in a focused attempt to falsely sexualize that interaction. This is a case that hinges on consent. The defense has argued the complainant was a willing and active participant in the sexual activity that took place. The Crown began her closing submissions by saying the opposite. She did not choose. She did not make a voluntary choice to engage in those sexual acts. Therefore, she did not consent. The Crown also told the judge the accused constructed a narrative to investigators in an effort to make them look good and the complainant look bad.
The Crown will continue her closing submissions tomorrow and says she plans to revisit the group chats sent before and after the incident, as she says this challenges the credibility of the 5 accused.
Right.
Sandy.
CTV's Heather Wright. Former Hollywood movie mogul Harvey Weinstein has been convicted of sexual assault in the retrial of his landmark Me Too case. The disgraced producer was acquitted of a second charge in a split verdict. The jury will continue to deliberate on a third charge of rape. Weinstein's initial conviction in 2020 was overturned by New York's highest court last year, paving the way for this retrial. The 73-year-old is also serving a 16-year sentence for multiple sex crimes in California. Allegations against Weinstein galvanized the Me Too movement, where women worldwide spoke publicly about harassment by influential men. And a Quebec zoo is considering charges after a man put himself perilously close to the jaws of danger.
Mais c'est qui ça?
Watch as he hangs over the alligator enclosure at the Granby Zoo, phone in hand. He was apparently taking a video to post online. The zoo says the stunt wasn't only dangerous for him, but also posed a risk to the gator. The man was kicked out. Still ahead, Canadian stars hold court. The homegrown hooper is stealing the spotlight in the NBA Finals. Canada isn't playing in the NBA Finals, but 4 Canadians are going to help decide the fate of Game 3. In fact, Canada is the most represented country in the NBA outside of the U.S. CTV's Adrian Gabriel now on the excitement surrounding Canada's contribution. Hi, Adrian.
Sandy, basketball in our country is on full display here inside this exhibition in downtown Toronto. Now, if you talk to any homegrown hoop stars, well, they'll likely trace back their love of the game to none other than Vinsanity. In the current NBA Finals, there's 4 Canadians waving the flag, led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, this year's league MVP. Over on the Indiana Pacers, there's Andrew Nembhard. His basketball journey can be traced back to a public high school hard court just north of Toronto. It was his grade 9 year when Nembhard first walked into this gym at Hood and Nalea, formerly known as Vaughan Secondary School. His basketball coach at the time, Gus Gymnopoulos, remembers it well.
Off the court, kind, smile, hug you, but on the court, just really tough as nails.
You have these young stars come through your program. When you identify them and you see them, how do you help nurture them along their basketball journey?
If you prioritize the team and the kid before winning, then you're allowed to, those kids are allowed to make mistakes.
He's starting to get a nickname, Playoff Andrew.
Now a standout in the NBA Finals, Nembhard's family has been taking in the journey, at times in disbelief.
I mean, getting here is monumental. To get here in his 3rd year, it's a big deal. And I'm still pinching myself, you know, just kind of soaking it in. And I just got a call from Andrew. We usually call me on game day, or I call him before the game and what to have his nap. So, you know, it's just, we're a regular family.
And there may be another Nembhard joining Andrew in the NBA, with his younger brother Ryan, a rising Canadian prospect who's hoping to be selected in the upcoming NBA draft. Sandy.
All right, Adrian, thanks. Now, the World Cup that Canada will co-host kicks off exactly 1 year from today, and the countdown is on.
Beautiful.
The clock ticking down to the event hosted by Toronto, Vancouver, and cities in the U.S. and Mexico was revealed today in Niagara Falls. And on the pitch last night in Toronto, Canada hoisted the trophy at the inaugural Canadian Shield tournament. It's a World Cup warm-up designed to generate interest in the big event. CTV National News returns in a moment. A retired social worker with time on his hands is on what he calls a cross-country listening tour. He's made his way through Nova Scotia, PEI, and now New Brunswick, setting up shop in public places with a folding table, chairs, and a sign that says, "You're not alone, I will listen." CTV Sarah Plowman reports.
Not far from the offices in downtown Moncton, Paul Jenkinson sets up his own. An office with more than an open-door policy. It's wide open to anyone.
Do you have something that you would like to talk about?
Linda alone does. She's new to Canada and is stressed about finding a job to support her child.
It's just I need to earn money.
Jenkinson, a retired social worker, offers a resource that's rare these days, his full attention.
And it's an honorable thing you're doing. It's like, who knows how it's going to work out, right? But you're coming with a good heart and skill. The tears are not unusual because people are sitting on a lot of worry and sorrow.
Some stop by with questions, others with thanks.
We're all fighting this battle of we need somebody in our lives.
As he hears highlights and heartbreak, he draws from professional and personal experience. His daughter was killed in a motorcycle crash 18 years ago. This space, he hopes, is one where people will feel no shame, but feel heard.
I hope that they realize that they're good people, that they're not flawed, they're not terrible, they're not a failure.
And for one person, doubts have turned to hope.
I feel better now because I talked with someone and it's good.
One connection between strangers.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. Nice.
Right.
Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Moncton.
I'm Sandy Ronaldo. As we say goodbye, we want to leave you with some good vibrations on the day we lost the Beach Boys' Brian Wilson. Your local CTV News is coming up. See you tomorrow.